Welcome to episode 8 of the Success Show podcast, where we dive deep into the stories and expertise of extraordinary individuals shaping the landscape of their respective fields. Today's conversation is with Mr. Suraj Juneja, who's an entrepreneur and a venture capitalist working with over 1,000 different founders and 300 different startups. In this episode, we discussed a diversity of topics ranging from how you start your startup and how you get the idea all the way to the paperwork required in a country like India. So stay tuned. Before you start watching, please don't forget to like and share this video as well as subscribe to this channel and the Ruhaan Mathreja Shorts channel. Follow me on Instagram at Ruhaan.Mathreja and at the Success Show podcast. Once again, you're watching the Success Show podcast. Enjoy. Hi, Mr. Juneja. Thank you so much for being on the show. It's absolutely delightful to finally have you. How are you
Hi,
doing?
Ruhaan. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure being on your platform.
Thank you so much. How are you doing? How's everything at home?
Absolutely well. Going
Hectic
great.
schedule or a little
Um,
relaxed right now?
Depending on the day of the week, but hectic. But even if it's hectic, it's a lot of fun. So that's what
Yeah, I'm
matters.
sure. I mean, that is a
Yeah,
life of the of any entrepreneur, so I'm sure.
absolutely.
So I really want to know your journey of how you got into entrepreneurship, and to start this podcast, I want to know your background of what made you want to pursue entrepreneurship, and what made you want to help other entrepreneurs build their startup and help
Right.
support them.
Okay. So basically, I've always been a serial entrepreneur. Right out of college, I wanted to do my own business. So it's always the joy of creation that gives me the maximum happiness. So I knew from a very, very early age in my life that I'm going to be an entrepreneur no matter what. So even though I did my MBA in marketing and finance, but and I got the best placement on campus, but within 3 months I left that because I just knew that's not me. While I was in college, I started my first business, and after that I've gone on doing several businesses. One after the other. I launched many different things, which I really felt passionate about or which I thought had great potential. And so very agnostic also, some into manufacturing, some into services, some into e-commerce, and so on and so forth. But then came a time when I realized that because I love the joy of creation so much, and I've understood of so many categories in so many years, how businesses work, how it can be grown very easily, or the art of growth hacking rather, the art of great ideas, a conceptual mindset, and stuff like that. That's when I said, why not start a whole startup ecosystem? So in about 2017, we launched something called Free Flow Ventures, which is a full startup ecosystem where we support. We're working with more than 300 startups right now. We mentored more than maybe 1,000 founders. We have the entire ecosystem within the bracket of Free Flow, where we have an incubation and acceleration center where we work with startups. We help them in whatever they lack or they are weak in, let's say technology or marketing or finance or compliance and so on and so forth. And we have in-house
Yeah.
teams that help them in this. Then we have a venture studio, one of the few in India. So venture studio is a concept where suppose you as a founder come up with a great product, and we tell you, okay, fine, we'll invest in your company, but we also as a company becomes a partner of you. So we want the founder to focus on the product, keep making the best version of the product possible, and not get distracted with other things in the business. For everything else like marketing, sales, the networks, investments, finance, we take care of the other part. So that's the
Yeah.
venture studio model, which is growing very fast and growing very rapidly. That model really has a lot of merit. So that's something which I'm very, very excited about. And we have an investment arm where we invest in startups, or we co-invest with our investor network, or we have a whole syndicate that can invest via our company itself. So this is the
So
entire gamut of the things it does.
yeah, I think that's literally exactly what I want to do. Of
Right?
getting into as many startups as possible, scaling
Absolutely.
other businesses, and eventually, of course, getting my own first.
Yes.
I actually saw your reel on the pickleball business
Yes.
idea, and that's basically like the venture studio, right? Where you
Right.
help them start their own pickleball academy or center, and
Yes.
you basically help with the funding and etc.
Yeah. So
So you spoke,
pickleball is,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, continue.
No, no, I want to know. Tell me a bit more about
Okay. So
pickleball
pickleball
because.
actually is one of our own ventures. Um, that's something we started from scratch. I saw this in US also when I went last to New York. The entire Central Park, half of it is pickleball courts now. It's a rage in the US. Of course, it's the world's fastest growing sport. Then I
Yeah.
saw that it's getting very popular in Ahmedabad, Bombay, everywhere. So I said, okay, let's bring it. So now we have the whole ecosystem of pickleball as well. We set up courts for people, or we, partner with people who have a space, and we, put the court and do a revenue share basis with them. And we have the entire accessory lot in our own brand also, like paddles, the pickleballs, nets. All that is our own brand right now. And in about 2 weeks' time, we'll be launching our own app where you can
Oh,
book
that's
your
great.
games, your slots, join a game,
Yeah.
and then we have events and tournaments. So there's a whole ecosystem around pickleball, and we're trying to grow that sport, and we're getting a great result out of that, a superb
Yeah.
response.
Yeah. I think another sport that's also picking up is paddle. I've
Yeah,
heard a lot about
absolutely.
paddle and pickleball,
Yes,
both, really
yes,
growing all over the world.
yes,
So you also spoke about your first venture that you started was in college. So I wanted
yes.
to ask you, what are the first steps of building a startup, and how did you come up with the idea? How is that done? Because personally for me, if I wanted to start a startup maybe a year back, the main thing I struggled with is what do I do? Like,
Right.
what industry, on what product? Do I want e-commerce? Do I want to invest? What do I want to do? So how do you decide the product or anything like that?
So, this is a very interesting question. In fact, on my official Instagram channel, I think, I get thousands of DMs and emails and comments and everything. And 80% of them is exactly this question that I want to start my business, but what do I do? I'm not very sure what to do. Or some people are
Yeah.
like, okay, I want to start a business, but I have 4 or 5 options. Which would be the best option? And so on and so forth. But the thing is that, because of that, I've identified and I'm going to be starting a program in September exactly for this, which says that, okay,
Okay.
how I can help you identify the right business idea for you. So what happens is that, the business idea is a very personal thing. Entrepreneurship is a very personal journey, right? So it
Exactly.
can't be one general idea which is very good. So what is a good business idea for me may not be a very good business idea for you. So why I'm telling you that is because when you're asking me that how to come up with an idea, it's actually maybe 12 to 14 steps which you should ideally go through when you're generating a business idea for yourself. So, for example, the first one is what is your interest area? If you're totally starting from scratch and if you have that option, rather start something which you like to do, you love to do, or you're interested in, you're good at, you perhaps have that skill set. So, the first thing that people miss out is the most basic and most elementary, which is this, which is the most important.
What you
Because
like to
tomorrow, if you're
do.
doing something which you don't enjoy doing, or you don't like doing, or maybe even hate doing, but you're doing it because there's great potential, you'll burn out. It won't. It'll be stress. But if you're doing something which you really, really like, it won't seem like work. It'll seem like play, and you'll obviously do it much better because you'll be good. You'll be naturally good at it.
Yeah.
So, the first step goes in that for sure. Second steps, a variety of steps also is that what is your criteria of investment? Some people say that no, I want to invest a lot of capital initially. I'm good to invest. Some people say no, I want absolutely zero investment, like a minimal investment to start with, and then I can go on and so on. Some people say, okay,
Yeah.
I'm good to go with a hybrid of both, right? Then you have stuff like, so I'm just giving you a snapshot about all these steps. Then you have parameters like, okay, what is your expectation from this? For example, you may want a business which you say, okay, in 2 years or 3 years, I want this to be a unicorn, or I want it to be 100 crore business or 1,000 crore business valuation wise. I may say, I want to start a business which has passive income. Every month I'm making so much from here. A third person may say, I want to start a business which has a hybrid of both. Okay, there should be a passive revenue coming every month, but that should have a growth trajectory also, which can be
Yeah.
a valuation. So that's also another thing to consider before choosing what the right idea is for you. Then you
Yeah.
have, some people like to be solopreneurs. They don't want to work with too many people. Some say, no, initially I want a whole team. I want to hire a whole team. So what is that criteria? Then it's your freedom index. Like, there are a lot of people who are in a corporate world already. There are a lot of people who are students. There are a lot of people who are homemakers who are telling me they want to start their business, but they can't give full time. They can give 3 hours
Yeah.
a day, or they can give 8 hours
Exactly.
on weekends. So is that your criteria, or you want something that no, you know what, I'm going to be on this 24/7? So that is also a huge criteria to choose what business idea is right for you, right? And so on and so forth. So there are all of these things to consider before boiling down on, what kind of business idea really, really works for you and what is good for you. And it's not that, if something is working in the world or something sounds really fancy, let's all just dive into that. That doesn't work. And that shouldn't be the
Yeah.
way, people should get into businesses. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it just has to be, a personal choice. It depends from person to person, from student to student,
Yes.
of what exactly they
Yes.
want to do. So also, I mean, with such a lengthy process, there also comes, the paperwork side. For a country
Yes.
like India, specifically, what are the basic paperworks that are needed? If you could share a bit about that as well.
Yeah, sure. So now it's fairly simple. It's not such a big deal, though people feel that this is a big deal. So
Yeah.
generally, this part is outsourced to a simple CA, right? Generally, you're not
Okay.
doing this yourself. You're giving it to a CA. They handle it totally for you. To anyway, the entrepreneur should not take the stress of this. But if they want to, then the basic thing is A is the company formation, which you have to do. Mostly people, startups today or founders today do a private limited, because then you can allot shares to an investor later, right? So private limited is the company formation for that. For that, once you do the company formation and you've chosen that, then you have your GST numbers, your trade license, which you have to have in place before you start anything. Once you have your
Yeah.
GST number and your trade license and your certificate of incorporation of the company, you can apply for a bank account. Once your bank account is open, you're in business. So it's basically the basic, these three or four things is your company formation, a certificate of incorporation, your GST number, and your trade license. Once you have these
Yeah.
four in place, your bank account.
To
A
be
gamut of
honest,
these five things is good to go, and I don't think it takes more than about 15 days on an average.
oh really?
Yeah,
To be honest, I thought it was a very overwhelming process, and probably took a couple months for me to just set up one license or
absolutely
get
not.
one thing done. So thank you
Yeah, yeah,
for
absolutely
clearing
not.
that out firstly.
Yes. In
And
fact, a good thing is that you must also register with Startup India. So they say you get a DPIIT number. If you get
okay,
that and you start, register with the Startup India, then you get a lot of benefits from the government as well. So that's
like
one thing that you
subsidies
should
and
keep in mind.
grants.
Yeah, subsidies,
Yeah,
grants, and so on and so forth. Income
got
tax, it's very, very income tax friendly also. So that's something which you should do in the beginning. And any lawyer, any CA, anybody will be able to do that for you.
that's great.
Yeah.
So you just in the start of this podcast you mentioned that you're working with over 1,000 founders and
Yeah.
300 different startups. So how do you identify what industry you want to enter, and uh, and how do you determine which industry is worth pursuing?
So I'll tell you, we are a sector agnostic. So it's not that I'll work only with some sectors or not, and so on and so forth. However, obviously there are some sweet sectors which I'm more interested in. So that also now has the science behind it. It's not just okay, this sounds good, let's do it. So now I believe totally in strategic investments, not plain vanilla financial investments. So I will only invest in a company if I know that I can strategically help them from going to A to B much faster. If me or my network that we already have can help that startup going from A to B faster, better, easier, and I know that that's going to work, that's when we invest, and we also become an active part of his company where we help him in this process. It's not just
Yeah,
okay, give the funds and then wait what's going to happen. So if that happens, then of course one of the main criteria to answer your question is the strategic relevance between me and the startup. So I know that let's say health tech can be extremely good, but do I have that strategic help that I can give them? Maybe not. Space tech sounds really good and it's a buzzword, but can I help the space tech company? May not be so much, but yes, if it's a D2C brand, if it's a creator economy brand, if it's something to do with gaming, if it's something to do with mobile apps like food delivery and other, of course, there's so much we can do to help them, and so on
yeah,
and so forth. So that's how we take a call, as in where we can help them also, not just that they are going ahead by themselves. Because what I've learned in the last 3 4 years, especially, is that it's not so difficult to raise funds. What's more important for a startup is how they're spending that money, which most
yeah.
founders don't know. So
Yeah.
that's where they need help. I think how to spend the money judiciously.
I mean, it's really great to hear, the way you're helping so many people, especially, 300 and 1,000 founders is a
Yeah,
very, very impressive number. So congratulations
thank
on
you.
that.
Thank you so much.
With so much success, I wanted to, the podcast name is called The Success Show. So I wanted to
Yes.
ask you what your definition is of success, and how would you define it? Because everyone has a different definition.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. So I was very, very clear about this from the very beginning. In fact, when since I was in college or maybe school, and even now the
yeah,
definition remains the same. And for me, success is freedom. So the freedom to do whatever I want, whenever I want, and however I want. That should be there. If that's not there, then there's no point doing any being an entrepreneur if you don't have freedom. Because entrepreneurship is all about being yourself. Living your true life, your true version of yourself. But there
yeah,
should be freedom. I mean, if you're okay with not being free, then you can work in any multinational, have a 9 to 5 job, get a great salary, but then you don't have
yeah.
your freedom. But if you can do whatever you want, whenever you want, I think that's what is success to me.
I think also a lot of entrepreneurs, have that creative aspect to them, and they
Yeah.
always need that liberty and freedom to, think out of the
Yes.
box. So if they don't have
Yes.
that, that's not success for them.
Right. Absolutely.
So I mean, there are many bad aspects of being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Every industry, every kind of job has downfalls and downsides to
Yes.
it. So through your entrepreneurial journey, can you tell me a bit about some downfalls that you've had as an entrepreneur in specific, and how you've been able to deal with them?
Yeah, so of course, a lot of times, everything like when you're in entrepreneurship or when you have a startup, then there are lots of dots that are connected, right? It's not just
Yeah,
you, there's your team, there's your investor, there's your customer, your vendor, and so on and so forth. So even if one dot pulls out or doesn't perform or goes back on the commitment, suddenly the whole space shakes up. So there
yeah,
has been, of course, times in my business rather, where let's say at one point in time in one particular startup, let's say one main investor pulled out at the last minute, saying I can't come in. So then it becomes very difficult because you have already committed to a lot of
yeah,
places, a lot of vendors and all that, and teams. You've hired teams and all that, and suddenly an investor pulls out. So those times are difficult, but still, I mean, I think if you work with a calm head and you soon find a replacement, because obviously if your work has merit, your business has merit, your startup has merit, or your product has value, then if one investor has said yes, definitely the others will see value too. It's just a matter of
yeah,
time when that dot connects. Similarly, when I am working with other startups also, there have been times where I've poured a lot of effort into certain startups, giving them a lot of leeway, my own time, maybe even money, space, infrastructure, everything. And then I see after 6 to 8 months, they've not been able to be persistent and they have pulled out and be like, forget it, it's not happening. And they perhaps,
yeah,
have joined a job or something like that. So that also is a setback, but then it's part of the game. I mean, that's what you have to do. There will be some who will be pulling out at the last minute or will be, not very sure about themselves because it is all about persistence in the end. So I think
yeah,
ultimately, if you look at it from a broad level, it is about connecting the dots and who all are connecting those dots. Whether they are
yeah,
there or not there is what creates the issues and the problems. So
yeah.
that's about it to make it a little simple.
So, do you have any sort of contract that you have signed with, especially the startups that you work with, that you have to commit to this to prevent any of this these kind of challenges coming your way?
So it really depends on the kind of structure we have with them. Like sometimes if it's a service-based contract with a startup, then we are providing them a service, which is perfect, which is then there's no
Yeah,
problem, nobody's going to pull out. If it's something where it's a plain vanilla investment where we've just made a financial investment, which is why I don't like to do that anymore, then obviously there's no contract. It's pure risk. You don't know whether the startup founders are performing or not. If it's a strategic investment, then yes, there's more control. So then the contracts can be in place that these are our deliverables, those are your deliverables and they have to be met. And if you can't meet those deliverables, then we can hire somebody in your place so the company doesn't suffer. So,
yeah,
like that, you can always have different hybrid structures. There can never be, one way for every kind of startup or something. It's not rocket science. People feel that, this is the structure, we follow this and it'll happen. It's different for every startup and every structure. So, with every founder comes their kind of mindset, their, let's say, even
approach and
limitations,
perspective. Yeah,
perspectives and everything which you know that you have to work with. You can't work against it and say it's my way or the highway and this is the way I work. So it has to
yeah,
be a win-win situation for both, and yet keeping both in the same line that okay, let's both work towards the success of the company, and that's easily doable. That's not such a big challenge or deal. Yeah.
who's the youngest entrepreneur you worked with? Is there anyone
Youngest.
close to my age? Yeah,
You are how old?
I'm 16. I'll be turning 17 in November.
Oh wow, yes. So there are, in fact, there are certain founders who are very very young. That could, let's say, I worked with the founder who was 18 when he started with us. We invested in his company also. In fact, he had already created something very cool. He was from Heritage, and by the
Okay.
time he passed out, he actually hired people from his own college and passed out. And now he has his office in the same building that we have our office. And I have invested in his company again, and we are supplying to all the top companies of Calcutta. So yeah, there are such stories for sure.
That's great. So, I also wanted to ask you, I mean, Indian entrepreneurs are definitely different from, the US. Every country has, different set of
Yeah,
entrepreneurs and different types of them.
yeah,
So, what are
yeah.
some common mistakes made by Indian entrepreneurs in specific while, they're just starting out or in general during their career?
Okay, so I think one thing which is there in Indian entrepreneurs, as a mentality or as the way we've brought up or as the way we've seen things in our life, we've got that very jugadu mindset that anything can happen,
Yeah.
or we can
Yeah.
get out of anything, or we can take care of things when it gets kind of in the gray area. There's a lot of you've always heard of bribes being given here and there, and people getting out of stuff, evading taxes and such as that. So that mindset really needs to change, that we need to go ahead with a structured approach, keeping everything proper in place, that at least the basics are not messed around with. So
Yeah.
people here, I think they kind of miss that a bit. They just go, they just go for the free fall, and then they try and firefight,
Cover
which
up
is
in
the
the
wrong
end.
way to do it. But if you see people in the US and some other countries, they can't do this because they can't get away with these things. They can't get away with tax evasion. They can't get away with bribery. Most countries, how easily we can. So that is something which I think Indian entrepreneurs need to be really clear about. That if they go ahead with a structured approach, keep the basics at least tight and clear, as don't mess around in that much. Then later they won't have problems, and that won't slow them down later. Otherwise, what happens that they go ahead with such fast, such a speed, such a velocity, and they ignore these basic things, that later when a problem happens, that slows them down. So that's where
Yeah.
a couple of them get stuck.
I think we have to make it, more systematic for every entrepreneur
Yes,
to be able to function,
yes,
in a stable manner. Otherwise, there's no
which is
point of,
happening.
becoming an entrepreneur in the first place if
Yes,
you're not able to manage
absolutely.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, how is it like working with, different investors? Because I'm sure, Free Flow Ventures, as an example, must have needed some sort of funding in the start. So
Yeah,
how
yeah.
is it working like them? I haven't yet launched my first startup, apart from
Right.
a luxury clothing brand that I just recently launched. And
Nice.
so how is it? That's also basically currently bootstrap. But how is it working with different investors? And what do they see and what do they look out for in an entrepreneur in particular?
So of course, so I'm speaking from both hats. One as an entrepreneur who has got an investment, and one as an investor who's looking for founders and who's invested in
Yeah.
founders. So mostly, of course, it's the business model. What gap are you addressing? What problem are you solving? That's the most important. That what your startup is about. And then, of course, it's about the founder. That does this founder have the passion? Does this founder have what it takes, that he'll go, like what I said, he won't just pull out in between. He'll go for the whole mile. He's going to go to the end of the road. Does he have the necessary skill set also to do what he's telling you that he's going to be doing? So stuff like that. So the founder, definitely, and the startup idea or the product, these two things are the main things that people look for. So a lot of people have the misconception that if a founder is from the IIMs or Harvard, that doesn't matter at all. Degrees
Yeah.
don't matter.
Yeah.
Where you've passed out from doesn't matter. What experience you have doesn't matter. What really depends on the spark that you have, the kind of passion you're working with, and the product or the problem you're solving. So that is extremely important. However,
Yeah.
skill set in your domain is very important. So, for example, if you say that I want to start this app which is like there for all creators, where they can make their own podcasts, for example, then I know that Rohan has done this, so he really has expertise in
The
this area. He
experience.
knows what it
Yeah.
takes and stuff like that. If you just come and say, okay, I'm an MBA, and I have the great idea that if there's a satellite which can beam something, so I'm like, where's your knowledge of space tech? Then you have to have a co-founder who has that knowledge, then it makes sense. So that's why a co-founder from another discipline is very important. Where if you are like from the MBA, sales, marketing background, you have a tech guy as your co-founder, and vice versa. If you're an engineer or a tech person, you must have a guy from the sales and marketing background as your co-founder. Then it makes a very cohesive team, and that's much more
Yeah.
investor friendly.
Yeah. So sometime back, I think I read an article that said, that I think 30 to 40% people who were from IIM or IIT didn't get job placements, and how that was really surprising. Of how the country is changing, and
Yeah,
now investors and entrepreneurs and business owners are now looking for people just above just the academics and degree point. So I think I can completely
absolutely.
relate with what you're talking about right now.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, you know what? If given a choice, I would not like to hire too many people from good B schools and especially these pedigree B schools and everything, because they come with a very closed mindset. They've been taught
Yeah.
things and they have in this particular box. If you go with people who are, let's say, even freshers, who are very smart and intelligent, I've seen them doing a great job. I would love to hire entrepreneurs who didn't succeed in the first go. Okay, let's say entrepreneurs, maybe the startup failed for some reason or the other, and they'll always give it a chance even later. I would love to work with those guys because those guys have much more experience. They are much more resilient. They are much more creative thinkers. Okay, their startup didn't work, no big deal, but the next one will work. But I would rather hire them and then give them an opportunity in one of my ventures or one of my startups that become a co-founder. So and we already have that system. It's called EIR, Entrepreneur in
Yeah.
Residence. So today, if you let's say join a particular venture of ours or a startup that we've created in the venture studio, and if you're doing a great job, then you can you can become a co-founder. Start also getting equities, and you
Yeah.
can it works both ways because then you will also join a venture where which you are passionate about. You like what they're doing. You like that area. That's your area of interest. So it really works on a win-win situation basis.
I mean, I really,
Yeah.
I think that's really great, especially because it's providing so much opportunity for the entrepreneurs
Yes.
out there who, aren't able to, make use of their opportunities that they already have. And this
Right.
just helps, give them a push even more and
Absolutely.
motivates them as well. So,
True.
lastly, can you give me some advice for any aspiring entrepreneurs like myself who are listening to this podcast or even watching it?
Yeah, so I'll just leave you with one thing, which I always talk about. So, you know, uh, you must have heard in every motivational speech, or let's say every event that you go to, and there are speakers, and they'll try to give jargons and this and that. But everybody will throw the statistic that 90% startups fail, 91% startups fail. You must have heard that a million times,
A
right?
lot
But
of times,
nobody
yeah.
really talks about why these startups fail. Somehow no one even asks that question. Everybody's happy just hearing the statistic that 90% startups fail, so be cautious and all that. But that's not the truth. Uh, I kind of, would like to answer why startups fail. So, and I've seen this in my journey with mentoring so many startups. So,
I'm
if you've,
sure.
let's say, if you related to Bollywood, if you see Bollywood, I'm sure, and let's say you take an example of Shah Rukh Khan as a actor, right? So he's acting in the film, but what if he tells you that yes, I'm the lead actor, but I will also choreograph this song. I will also be the playback singer. I'll also be the cinematographer. I'll also edit this movie. And if you have to serve tea, I'll serve tea as well. So obviously, what do you think will happen to the movie? It'll tank,
Flop.
right?
Yeah.
So same way, a founder tries to do all of these things, listening to all these jargons that eat, drink, sleep, your startup, do this, do that, do whatever it takes. That's the wrong advice. You know, a startup founder has to focus on his core strength, what he's great at, and leave the other stuff to others who are good at those. So if a Shah Rukh Khan is good at acting, he sticks to that. You get a great choreographer, you get a brilliant playback singer, and then the movie is a hit. Same way for
Yeah.
startups, you need to focus on your core strength and make sure you get somebody else for the other things. Because see, all of us are either right brained or left brained, right? If you're right brained, then you're more creative, you are more into the marketing, sales, that side. If you're left brained, you're
Yeah.
more of an analyst, you're more into numbers and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
if you are right brained and you try to hire a tech team, obviously you'll have a problem somewhere. Again, if you're a
Yeah.
tech entrepreneur and you try to sell or go out to make your ads, you'll falter somewhere. So that's, I think, something which I would leave you with, that focus on what your core strength is, so that
Yeah.
this mess up doesn't happen.
I think it's also just about doing what you're best at and not. I think
Yes.
there is that saying, right? Something about I can't recall it, but it's something about being the master of none when you put your hands into everything.
Yes,
You
yes,
don't
yes.
you rather put your hand into one thing and do
Yeah.
that great rather than putting into 10 different things. So to
Absolutely.
end
Jack
this
of all trades,
episode,
master of none. Yeah.
yeah. I couldn't get the quote in my mind.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
I wanted to do a quick rapid fire round with you. I usually do this
Yeah,
with every guest of mine.
sure.
So what's your favorite startup that you've worked with as of now?
Meta Drive.
Okay. Can you tell me a bit about what the company does? Just a small description of
So
what they're
they've
into.
manufactured India's first motion-based driving simulator. So you can sit there, you can
Oh,
sit on it, and you can drive any, even any F1 car on any F1 track in the world, and you'll feel that you're really driving that car. So it's better than the German
oh,
technologies also that used to exist, and I'll be announcing it soon on my page
that's
as well.
great. That's great. If you could start a business tomorrow,
Yeah.
what would it be?
So anyway, I start up businesses every day. So,
I know,
but yeah, if I start a business
but
tomorrow,
any
it would definitely
extraordinary
be.
field,
Sorry,
any
sorry.
extraordinary field, any
No,
extraordinary
actually,
field that
I
you would
would
want to get.
definitely start a business now, which I really want to, in fractional ownership using cryptocurrency or at least using coins. So, fractional ownership, it could
Okay.
be of supercars, called super bikes, of anything, but that using
Yeah,
coins.
I've been hearing
So, I
that.
think that has
Yeah.
a huge scope in India.
Yeah, I've been also getting a lot of reels on, you can own
Yeah.
this car in only 10 lakhs and things
Yes,
like
yes,
that.
yes.
So,
But there are smarter ways of doing that. Even a luxury watch can be co-owned by 10 people. But people
yeah,
haven't started that concept yet. Yeah.
the watch club business reel, I
Yes,
watched
yes,
that as well of
yes,
yours.
yes.
At what time of the day are you most productive?
At night.
I'm also not a morning person, to be honest.
Yeah.
So,
I'm the
throughout the
most
day and till the
creative at
night,
night. Yeah.
what's the most exciting industry right now?
I think definitely AI. But for me, I would say AI and the creative economy. And the creative economy is going to go through the roof. This is just the beginning.
Yeah.
So you're in the
Uh,
right space.
yeah, I really want to grow this and make
Yes.
it big in this podcasting industry. So I'm
Absolutely.
trying my best on that. If
Yes.
you had
It's a
to
good
write a
space.
book tomorrow, what would you write it on?
It's going to be on business ideas.
I think you also have a PDF, right? 60 of the best.
Yeah. So in fact, I am in the process of writing a book, not just
Okay,
about business ideas, but about the art of original ideation. So
I
it's
think
in the
that's
process.
what a lot
Let's
of
see
people
how.
need.
Yeah, I hope
Yeah.
so.
If you won, say, $10 million tomorrow, what would you spend it on?
Actually, again, I'll create maybe 10 more different companies because that's what I love doing. Maybe
Yeah,
different things. Partner up with super founders like you and create 10 more companies. I think that will give me the most joy.
yeah, I'd love to do that as well.
Yes.
Uh, One other occupation other than being an entrepreneur that you would like to explore?
Author slash teacher, which almost I'm doing right, nowadays. So I am
Yeah,
teaching a lot of people. I've started a program which I had to, out of all the, the demand that was coming in, and writing. So I think these two would be the
yeah.
parallel
And
spaces.
lastly, what's your favorite book or any book you'd recommend to our audience to read?
So actually, there are loads and loads of books, but I really like Ikigai because I follow that concept also very strongly. I think that's a great book to read, and that's a great concept to understand. It's pretty much what I keep talking about. That you do what you do what you love, and it should have some value to society. So there is a
Yeah,
mix of three things that you can create in Ikigai, and if you actually can do that, then you're living your best life. You have a purpose in life, and you're living your passion as well as getting paid for it. So
yeah,
it's the best way to live, is the best way to work, and the Japanese have proven it because they are the people who live, let's say, longest in this on this planet, and there's a
yeah,
science behind that, and a main reason is ikigai.
yeah. This is the end of this podcast. Thank you so much, for sharing your insights, and I really,
Th-
really enjoyed it. And I really grasped a lot of knowledge that I didn't know about, especially when it comes to learning about how to found your startup, the process, and much more of right
yeah.
from the investment to the idea. So thank you so much for being on the show. It was an absolute
Thank you
honor.
so much for having me. It's my pleasure.
Thank you.
All right. See you soon.